Hello and welcome to the Securosis Firestarter for July 13th, 2015. And boy, we haven't been on in a little while. So summer vacations, things get a little crazy. Heck, as you can tell, I just finished a workout and went straight to doing this. So it was the only time to get various things fit in. Joining me as always, first, Mike Rothman.
You need to shower. I can smell you through the friggin' bits
Oh,
of the internet.
yeah. Yeah, no, I smell horribly right now. Yeah. It's bad. So I just got back. I was in Boulder, Colorado for 3 weeks with the family, and a healthy place. I got runs and rides and hikes in. Mike came out. We climbed a mountain
We did.
together and all sorts of other stuff. And apparently, I really like the beer in Boulder because I put on a few pounds. So time to get rid of those. Adrian,
So let me introduce the rotund rich mogul.
this is fat me. Yeah. All right, and then also Adrian Lane. You guys probably figured that out.
Yeah, and this is the jealous me for not being in Boulder and not hiking the mountain and being here in 115-degree heat. Nice to see you again, Rich.
Yeah, not nice to be home. No, not at all. Yeah, I could live without it. So, all right. So there's a lot going on in the news today, but there's really only one thing that I personally care about, which is, China has another copy of my security records from the federal government, which is always fun. And I don't know. I'm just we may have an explicit tag on this one before we're done, because
Oh,
yeah.
PM. Right? How's that?
Why don't one of you guys give the background?
Yeah, OPM got owned, top to bottom. Office of Personnel Management, top to bottom, the folks that store all of the personal information for all of the personnel in any way, shape, or form that does almost anything for the U.S. government, owned night, just nighty night. So, I think that they're trying to figure out exactly what happened. I know that there's a lot of misinformation, disinformation out there, as always happens with these things, and I love it when I've started to see vendors, kind of show me slide decks, right? Because there are a zillion friggin' startups now, cybering all the things. So all these startups come in and they have how their thing, and this is the new one, right? I saw a couple over the weekend. Their new thing, this is how we would stop the OPM breach. I'm like, oh, really? So you actually know what happened with OPM? You're sure about that? And you get a lot of humana. So I don't necessarily know that we know any more than anyone else. I think one of the last ones we did was, you don't know. I won't bleep it out yet because, Rich, you'll get there, and we may as well blame you for the explicit tag as opposed to me today. But we don't know what happened, right? But what we do know is the potential fallout. And the reason that this was interesting to me as opposed to, the United issue, Wall Street Journal, New York Stock Exchange, which everybody wanted to say was some kind of cyber-driven thing. The thing that was interesting about this topic to me, because we haven't done a Firestarter in a while, is really just a lot of the data privacy and personal records impact. And obviously with Rich having a vested interest in here, this is something where we can really start to personalize the feedback that we give to folks, right? As opposed to the generic, you work for a Fortune 10 enterprise, here's what you should do, which we get via research. This is an opportunity for us to really talk about something from the perspective of, oh crap, my data is in some building in China.
Yeah, and this is an interesting one. The initial breach stuff that came out was kind of the personnel records, and those are bad enough, but that's just kind of it's the equivalent of your HR file with OPM. And they said, well, 4 million, maybe 14 million, and then it went up to net last week or a couple of days ago, 21 million. And it is also believed that they lost the database of. So OPM is responsible for all the background investigations, and you guys have seen this in the news. It looks like whoever breached OPM, the initial finger is pointed to China as always, and very likely could be China. I mean, it's the kind of thing that if I was paying taxes in China, I would want my government to do. So I don't blame China or the Chinese for taking advantage of our poor decisions here. But and OPM had that database of everybody who filled out a security form called an SF-86, which I couldn't remember. It turns out I have filled out with some of the kind of things that I do that I don't like to get into the specifics of what I do. They're not that super secret. It's just I'm not authorized to speak on behalf of my on behalf of my agency when I do my part-time stuff. So I keep that part of my life separate from this part of my life. But now they're colliding because our data was lost. That form. Now, I didn't have to do a top secret background investigation or anything like that. I don't have a clearance. It's just a security sensitive position. You have to fill that out. That's all federal employees, all contractors, anybody who is going through the background investigation process. Mine had things like every place I've traveled, every place I've lived, a lot of neighbor, known associate kinds of things that are in there. And that's the lightweight version of it. The people who go deeper into like the top secret level stuff, I had previously a TS investigation for something else. That level of depth is even well beyond, and so it is a gold mine for whoever got this. Now, if it's a financial crime, and this is how I broke it up. So I had to actually present to the people on my team with the group that I work with, kind of, the cybersecurity guy, of course I'm going to tell them how to protect themselves. And I broke it out and I go, almost the best case scenario for you, because we're low level folks, the kind of stuff that we do is that China has our stuff. It's potentially worse for me and for a couple of other people. For me, it could affect us in ways I'll talk about later. There's a couple of people that do have security clearances. It's going to affect them worse. But for everybody else, they don't have anything really that, in the end, if you really think about it, China wants. And they don't have to worry about the financial fraud and crime because, that's just not what a foreign government is going to use that information for. On the other hand, it could have gone to criminal elements. And if it went there, that's a goal. I mean, they can just own you. The level, they have everything you could possibly need. The equivalent of getting a full credit record if they want to do something bad there for financial purposes. So I kind of went through how to protect yourself from different kinds of financial crime and credit freezes and or security freezes or whatever it's called, and those kinds of things to defend against it, and said, hey, you have to assess your own risk now. Just assume anything you ever gave OPM, which nobody even knew what OPM was, half the people in the room. They just, because that's not who we work for. And, anything you ever gave the government, you just have to assume that that's out there now. And that's going to affect for the rest of your life. Your social security number is never private. All of those details from anything that happened to your life from the day you filled out that form, somebody else has. And that's a hard message. That's hard to tell somebody, and especially people who aren't technical and can't understand their risk.
That sucks.
Yeah. Well, and then things come out like the Inspector General OPM has failed every security audit they've had, and the IG office said years ago you should actually shut these databases off because it's too high of a security risk, and they went forward. So clear, I mean, you do that, that's negligence at that point. And now a couple of heads are going to roll. I don't think anything will change though. The whole FISMA system is broken and doesn't help direct things to where they need to be. To be honest, I think they should go do what the CIA did. CIA contracted with Amazon for their own private cloud because Amazon runs it all. I think federal just go to Microsoft for the Office stuff because you're using it all already, and get a private Office, 365 data center for just the federal government that's walled off from everything else, and go to Box or somebody else, or maybe even still just Microsoft for file storage stuff. And that way people who can actually care about security can be the ones that have their hands on more of the data and don't have so many of these huge databases that are publicly accessible. The fact that whoever the attackers are, and it might be multiple group of attackers. And if you fail so many security audits that the Inspector General says turn it off, I have no guarantees that it's only China. I suspect they don't even have the fundamental monitoring capabilities in place so that the forensic investigators coming in can truly determine the full scope of the breach and of where that data went. So I have to assume my stuff's everywhere. So now I got to go through all the credit stuff. And by the way, they gave us 18 months of credit monitoring, which is total bullshit. It's nearly worthless.
It's like giving you a free puppy for having a data breach, right? It has nothing to do with it, but
yeah. Yeah, it's a misdirection. The NOPM has been, apparently misdirecting from the start, and I'm not making this up. The members of Congress from, both parties are coming out of like classified briefings, going, they're not telling us everything. We still don't really know. They seem to be more interested in protecting themselves than anything else.
And they may not know, as you just said.
Oh,
Right.
I'm
They
sure they
don't, if they don't have the right monitoring, they don't have the right telemetry, that data is gone, right? So they may not actually be able to identify the adversary or
know.
adversaries. Let's not make the assumption it's a singular.
So if I thought I was owned that bad, I would run under the assumption I'd say we potentially lost everything. What is the worst case scenario? Let's hope we're wrong, but let's respond from there. They're doing the traditional government thing, which is covering up asses, not admitting what the worst case scenario is going to be, and trying to minimize and control the messaging, which really only makes the situation worse.
You bet. You
I mean,
bet.
they're all getting fired anyway.
So
So
what do you? So credit monitoring isn't helpful. I mean, obviously, if two steps beyond financial fraud starts, then that would be something that would trigger that. You got personnel records out there. You got. I mean, if you're affected, you just hold your hands up. I mean, what actionable thing can you actually do as a
so
person impacted by this?
Yeah, so for the financial side, I need to do it. I got to talk with my wife about this, but I got to put a security freeze on the account on our credit records to help minimize the damage there. That only helps for new account creation. It doesn't help for a lot of other things, utilities, public records. There are services that monitor those kinds of things. I need to make the decision if I want to pay for those for the rest of my life, which is what it comes down to. And I might, if the price is right at that point, to try and minimize, kind of any damage. But the worst is obviously the new account stuff. I don't care. They don't have my credit card numbers, so I'm not worried about anything along those lines. It's the taking mortgages out my name. I don't think that's where this data ended up, but just in case it is,
Right.
and I gotta follow down that path. And it's something I've got some minimal stuff. I have more than minimal stuff in place to protect myself there as it is. I've avoided doing some of the heavier options, and the security freeze being the biggest one because that locks your account. I mean, nothing can happen. If you want new credit, it's going to be like a 24-hour process. People can't even run a credit check without you unfreezing your account. And I don't apply for a lot of credit on a regular basis, but there's, even for business stuff, because we're owners of the company, we'll have to handle that. So it'll be a pain in the butt for a long time, like the rest of my life. And that's all, by the way, due to the BS of social security numbers being the only thing you need to kind of get into somebody's financial life. Now, the other side is more concerning, and that is so some people talked about China targeting people for blackmail and such, people with security clearances, or getting the known associates and seeing how many of them are in China and then starting to, invade, go after their own citizens and probably from an intelligence standpoint to try and use them to turn people. There's the whole can you turn somebody into spies aspect of it. The one I personally worry more about, because I'm not in that business at all, I got nothing to do with any of that, for myself is I'm now a security risk to Securosis and everything that we do, because there's enough information in that record to potentially do things like account takeovers and or get into some of my accounts, or and so the way I have to handle that is a couple of things: making sure I turn multi-factor authentication on for everything, making sure you guys are aware of that, so if you see anything fishy, having an understanding of what our central services are for some things, making personal connections and putting on randomized security questions as opposed to the where did you go to school? Well, that's public anyway. It's a stupid question, or mother's maiden name, or any of those things. Now I'm just going to start putting some random answers in and storing all of those things in one password. And these are habits I'm now going to have to start building for the rest of my life, because, again, anything from the day I filled out that form, the last time I did it was a couple of years ago, maybe 3 years ago, I can't remember. All of that information I have to assume that they have. I have to think very hard if I go back over to China again. I've been over there a few times for work-related things, but previously I was just some security guy coming over. Now they're actually able to correlate, the speaker name with that. And do they care? Probably not. I don't think I matter. I really don't think I do. But I have to, keep these things in the back of my head and try and make rational decisions about it. And it's hard because it's, it's lifetime level. It's out there. There's no clawing it back. If it's somebody other than China, then I have to also have a better sense of, and hopefully they'll give me a sense of that. I have no confidence that I'll get any more details or information about it, and I'm basically a lifetime security risk for anybody at this point.
We're going to quarantine you.
That's from the smell. That has nothing to do with the
Oh yeah, of
security issue.
course, but
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, what do you guys have to add? Obviously, it affects me personally. It's frustrating too. This is stuff I did volunteer on the
Yeah,
side.
it's so part of it, and I have mixed feelings on this, right? Because obviously, what looks to be stonewalling is problematic, right? Obviously, not being able to get the full story is an issue for people who understand, kind of what's at risk, and people who understand what it is that they're doing, like us, right? That's a problem. Um, but the reality is there are probably 21,999,000 other people who are impacted by this that have no idea what the hell you would even say if we got the full story, right? And if anything, that may cause more damage and hazard. And so it's always that balance of what do folks, the great unwashed really need to know, what do the folks that know what they're doing really need to know, what is the true kind of attack surface, and what are the risks of folks moving forward. But ultimately, I'm pretty confident that we're never really going to get great answers because they don't have any idea what the hell happened, right? And there's no way to get it once kind of somebody has already made off with all of your stuff. To the degree that they've tried to hide their tracks, they've hidden their tracks. To the degree that they can sit there and attribute it to a nation state, that's because the nation state just doesn't give a crap, right? To cover their tracks. The financial guys do. So if they were in there, they've already erased any kind of inkling that they were in there already. So
Well, there is a hope. I mean, the Einstein monitoring system was in place, and while it missed, the breach and everything else because it's not that great a system, perhaps there's enough traces and kind of those structures outside of OPM. So I'm never going to, I'm not going to assume. I mean, if this was still active when they discovered it, that means there's command and control and other pieces. However, that won't necessarily say, that was the only threat actor, that attacker that actually went through and did something. So anyway, I agree. We're not going to have a full sense of what's going on here.
cyber all the things.
Yeah. So I mean, look, the only advice is others in my shoes is, you're going to have to assess your risk. I was talking with on Twitter. That's the only reason. Andy Ellis from CISO of Akamai. I mean, well, he's former military, I believe, and
Yes.
has he's got OPM stuff in there. A lot of us in the security industry have ties to the federal government, and whether or not you've held a clearance or not, the data may have been exposed here, and everybody's just we're all getting our breach notifications now. Mine was sitting in the mail when I got back, plus the email one, so we got. And we have to think of, for us, maybe what we did for the government was not that important. Now we have to figure out, okay, is that going to affect us in our private sector lives as well? And I think I'm in much less of a target position as some other people, but it's still, will I always be in much less of a target position? And then with that data, what kind of attacks could they execute? So, and that's a tough position. It's not something I'm looking forward to.
You bet. But even folks that are not impacted directly by OPM, assuming that that level of stuff is not out there, is probably not a good assumption.
Yeah.
Right? Because, yeah, maybe this was able to assemble whatever the dossier is in one fell swoop. But, the fact of the matter is, again, a lot of these organizations, especially the financial fraud folks, are extraordinarily organized about how they go about gathering information, how they gather it, how they analyze it, how they put together, again, phishing types of campaigns to target, specific folks that they want to try to penetrate, and it could be for corporate reasons, right? So I think in general you have to have that healthy brand and amount of paranoia about how much of your data is out there. So what I don't have is confirmation that all of my data is out there, but I assume it is now. Rich and everybody else that served the U.S. federal government in some way, shape, or form over the past 20 years, your stuff is out there. Right, but I don't know that we should be behaving any differently, right? Whether you know it or you don't, you just have to assume that it is.
Yeah, you have to assume that it is. And I mean, look, realistically, this is, could end up being one of the biggest intelligence failures in modern history. It probably is, or biggest intelligence successes, I guess, on the part of whoever whoever did the attack, if it was for the intel side versus the financial side. We'll have to see. So we can blabber on about this. I think that what it comes down to is for those that are potentially affected, like myself. We just have to keep in mind what is the lifetime impact. This doesn't go away. And from a phishing standpoint, from account takeovers, from financial aspects of it that might kick in, and it sucks. And to be honest, I don't expect the government to take care of us. So, that's the bureaucracy. That doesn't matter what party is there, doesn't matter who's in charge, and when the bureaucracy kicks in like this and goes into self-defense mode, this is what happens. All right, enough depressing stuff. I need coffee really bad right now, especially after that. I should probably go have a beer, but got to work on that.
I'm 3 hours ahead of you guys, so I'm already well into my almost my second venti now.
Yeah. Yay! All right. Well, thanks everyone for watching, and we'll be back. Sometime. I don't know.
Probably after
Relatively.
Black Hat, I would think.
Yeah. Probably around Black Hat time. So.
Yeah.
All right. Have a great week.